Welcome back. I am continuing with honoring the Aries season, and I'm doing so by sharing every week a personal aspect, something that's in my chart that has nothing to do with the current transit. And so last week I was talking about Pluto conjunct South Node, and there's no such transit in the skies unless you have South Node at the early Aquarius, in which case that would have been of interest. But otherwise, it's my personal, in my chart, that's an aspect I have. This week, I'm going to be talking about Pluto in Virgo, and we certainly don't have Pluto transit in Virgo, so it's again nothing to do with a collective transit. I do know that many of you are Pluto in Virgo, and so this will be particularly of interest to you. It's obviously the way I work with anything in terms of my own personal journey of personal development and evolution and self-integration, all that. It's that I reach to theories that will help me understand something about myself, astrology being one of the biggest frameworks for so many of these theories. But I always test them. And that's not to say that that's the truth of that particular thing that I'm testing, but it's certainly my truth. So you get everything here, even outside of Aries season, that's just filtered through my own experience. And I love to remind you of that because that's so important. This is not prescriptive, but you may find it useful and you may recognize yourself in a lot of it, which, I would be surprised if you didn't. If you have Pluto in 6th house, this will also be helpful. You will resonate with a lot of themes, I imagine. And if you want to understand the deeper drives and desires and complexes of Virgo, then you also want to listen to these videos. Because what Pluto does is, when it's in a sign, it gives us the deepest desires and motivations, and therefore the truth of that sign. It's like, what's really hiding behind that manifestation, that external expression of a sign. Why is it like that? And then you look at, you consider Pluto in that sign, and then you have the answer. I'm going to start small, which is very Virgo like. So one of the things that Pluto in Virgo generation is here to learn, or rather how we learn who we are, is by learning who we are not. Now, it might sound small and maybe even doesn't register the potency and the significance of this sentence, this particular mandate that Pluto has on us, on our soul, as being Pluto's in Virgo, but it's huge. So why it's huge is that, at least for me, it has been such a self-compassionate reminder that even though to someone outside would find my ways either too roundabout or too counterintuitive or too unnecessarily complicated or something, that I'm actually figuring things out, but figuring what's not my truth and what's not true to me. And if you think of Virgo, you will very quickly understand why that is. I mean, this is at the heart of Virgo. Virgo is essentially it's a process. It's like if any sign is in, work in progress, it's Virgo. Virgo is really the poster girl for that saying, because Virgo as an archetype, it reorients us on our journey of self-development from egocentric point of view, which is up until Leo and including Leo, to ego-concentric, which essentially means many egos together, which is the Libra onwards all the way to Pisces. But it's neither. So the process is the Virgoan process. At the core of Virgo is this process of sorting through what's useful, what's not, what's unnecessary, what's helpful, right? And so the same goes for this process of learning about who we are as Pluto in Virgo. So So this piece that we're learning who we are not is how we're learning who we are. And it's wonderful because it can seem long-winded, it can seem slow, but it's Virgo, and therefore that long-windedness and slowness is actually good. It means we're doing Virgo correctly, right? So remember that. So don't be swayed and rushed. The other piece about Pluto in Virgo that I certainly, all this is like, these, I chose these, there are probably many other, in fact, I'm sure there are many other ways to experience Pluto in Virgo, but these have like rung true and truth for me from day one. And so this is another one, which is what Jeffrey Wolf Green, and it's my Bible when it comes to Pluto, particularly Pluto in Virgo, is what he calls the standard of right conduct. It comes from this Virgoan sense of that we've done something wrong, we have made all kinds of mistakes, and we have done things not the right way. So we are attached to this idea that we've got to do things the right way. But because it's Virgo, and Virgo is a crisis sign because it's in between these like two big chunks of our chart, the zodiac wheel, right? It's in between them. It's kind of nestled in and wedged in, and it's neither nor, right? Neither or. It's a sign of crisis. And so we don't really know what is right. We're not sure. There is so much uncertainty and lack of confidence and insecurity in Virgo because it's being positioned where it sits in the zodiac wheel it's meant to be like that. We're meant to have an experience of ourselves through the zodiac that will kind of bring us to our knees. And that's what Pluto in Virgo does to us. So another key theme is humility. But the way we get to humility is humiliation. So I imagine that so many of you, I know I certainly am, it's one of the biggest wounds. It's the terror of feeling humiliated. And the memory of it, we have it cellularly. It's like our body remembers being humiliated, and it's just awful, right? So back to the right conduct, we don't know what right conduct is because we spent lifetimes and we have now entrenched all those codes of conduct into our Pluto in Virgo. But they were all wrong in the sense that they were external. So they were typically, Pisces axis is the ultimate religious kind of Christianity. And so there is that sense that we trusted something external to us, which is Pisces, but we used it to punish ourselves. We used it as this punitive God, let's say. And what we inherited through Pluto in Virgo is this wrong sense of what's right. And because we abandoned ourselves and our own innate sense of right and wrong, and so we followed something because we felt safe, we felt secure, the insecurity of Virgo, right? And so we now don't know what's right and wrong. We do, but we are terrified to act because we don't trust ourselves. So we are so wrapped up in this right and wrong, but really the missing piece is the Pisces piece, which is to trust that whatever's coming our way, to receive it with humility and to be humbled by the forces that are beyond our power, and our ability to control, which we can to a point, but we are in overdrive in Pluto in Virgo to control our lives, the lives around us, and everything else in between. And that's Virgo in overdrive. Another theme that is kind of connects to what I've just been talking about is that we have part of our identity, one of our identities is the guilty. we are the guilty. We just are the guilty. That's it. You know, we identify with being guilty. And so from that identification, we live our lives. And so, of course, I mean, most of us, and I imagine most of us here on this channel, and are aware of that, and that it's actually a pattern that's not helpful, to say the least, right? And that we want to kind of break it and evolve from it and all that, but it's hard. I mean, it's just so deeply entrenched in us, this identity of a guilty, right? And if you think about your life, I know when I think about mine, it really is easy. It's like we are comfortable in that role of being guilty. We are good at beating ourselves up, and we know we're doing well. We are very analytical. We can come up with all these excuses and reasons why we are guilty. But really, what that's doing, because we're so comfortable with this identity of being guilty, we keep recreating situations and scenarios which will just compound this sense of guilt. So then we feel guilty for having all these excuses and having done not a lot really with our lives. And kind of the term that Jeffrey Wolf Green uses is like, we have a clear memory, and really a powerful memory, like we can't deny it, that we have copped out on ourselves, like we have let ourselves down. We have had many lifetimes where we resisted, or we kind of avoided, which is another Virgo quality. We avoided we avoided doing what we really needed to do, and what we wanted to do, and what we were meant to do. We avoided doing it. And so we have that profound sense that we have betrayed ourselves, right? We have let ourselves down. And yet we continue that because it's like comfortable. We know that. We've done that so many times. It's like automatic. We are on autopilot when it comes to these guilt-tripping trips, right? And this piece about copping out is rooted in this another Virgoan quality, perfectionism. So because we are striving for perfectionism, because Virgo has that microscopic vision, and we can see everything that's imperfect, and we can't unsee it until it's made perfect. We can't stop, right? But that perfectionism means we're never ready, so we just never act. And that's a critical piece that I struggle. Like, we can analyze till cows come home. We have this analysis paralysis, right? Which is really a way of keeping us from acting on these conclusions that we have so smartly and intelligently and critically assessed and decided that's really not useful, this is useful, but we will not act on it. Because we just don't have that muscle well developed, and we're just going by inertia. Now, one way that this has been set up for us to trigger us out of these stasises, if that's plural, is crisis. The crisis is a catalyst, and a necessary catalyst. It's in Virgo nature to undergo crisis regularly in order to be snapped out of this stasis, of this everything I just talked about. And so the crisis without action, which then leads to change, which that leads to evolution, is ineffective. And so, but one thing that Pluto in Virgo needs to remember, take a step back and just, what's the next first thing that I need to do that comes, that it's clear, like that's the next step, and do that. Don't worry about what comes after. And every time I do that, I find myself just calming down and getting clarity, and I can sometimes even see the couple of steps ahead, and that's reassuring to Virgo, because it's like he needs to be in control a little bit at least. It's an earth sign, so there has to be some sense of, it's okay to want to have some control and to get it and to work for it, right? It's just when we overdo it, right, that it kind of goes pear-shaped. Another thing that breaks my heart is that Virgo carries this deep sense of absolute aloneness. So this is like far deeper and harder and harsher than loneliness, because loneliness is essentially missing other people, like not being with other people. And that in itself, it's not easy, I get that. But at least there are other people you can see, you can make the bridge. You can, if you wanted to, at least there is hope. The hope is realistic, like it's realistic to expect to kind of be able to solve the problem of loneliness, because there are people around you, around us, right? We live in a world of other people, right? But this existential aloneness is the aloneness in spite of all the people around us that maybe make us feel not lonely, but we still feel alone. And so the remedy for this existential aloneness is, Pisces, is trust and belief in something, in something beyond earth, beyond matter, beyond the individual, beyond what we can touch and feel, the kind of evidential material world, right? So it has to be beyond you. It has to be bigger than you. It has to be a trust in something bigger, like there is a plan, there is a trusting that you're taken care of, and by a force that you can't maybe comprehend with your logical mind. But as a Pluto in Virgo, that's so hard. Oh my God. And maybe for me in particular, because I have South Node there and Jupiter. So this Piscean piece is just, I love it. I mean, I'm surrounded by Pisces in my online life. It's still foreign. It's still so far removed from what it feels like home to me. What feels, and I get that that's the point, to a point, but it's so far removed from who I feel, what I feel connected to, is that I just can't make the journey towards it. And so maybe you're the same. Tell me, I would love to hear how you feel about Pisces, not as a person or anything, but as an archetype and all the themes of Pisces. You might be Pisces. Obviously, there are Pisces, a lot of Pisces in Pluto and Virgo generation. And so maybe you're familiar, maybe this is not such a big deal for you. And great. You lucky one. But if you don't have Pisces in your chart, like any placements there, and it's like in a house that it's not a cardinal, as in one of the 4 angles and all that, you might struggle like I do with spirituality and with this trust in something beyond. And I know it. It's like I know it's like stupid not to think of it, not to believe it, and yet it's so. My cells won't do it. I don't know how to turn them around. I tried and I did all kinds of stuff, and it never felt like it never gelled with me. And yet that's the answer to remedy and to soothe some of these themes that I just talked about, that really create a lot of anxiety, to say the least, for Pluto in Virgo folks. And there are 2 other things that I'm going to talk about, which are touched, and one of them I touched on a little bit. So I'll start with the crisis of meaning, because it kind of follows from the Pisces piece that I was just talking about. The reason Virgo has this perpetual sense of crisis of meaning, it's like, what's the point of living? Like the meaninglessness of life, is because of that microscopic vision, but also the furthest removed from Pisces, where that meaning is the only meaning that actually Virgo will be soothed by, the meaning of the greater picture, of divinity, of God, or some bigger plan, bigger design, that's like I just talked about, right? And yet it hasn't got the muscle, it hasn't got a muscle memory even of any of that. It's such an unknown. But this is not just the sense of meaninglessness, like what's the point of it all, because we are so far removed from Pisces. It's the crisis of meaning that's actually like, thank goodness there is crisis of meaning, because it's the crisis, as I said earlier, is the catalyst for change. So we are hard pressed to find meaning. We are so like, and we can go for a long period of time without questioning it too much and just being in our work mode, which is why work is such a Virgo piece, and and Pluto in Virgo generation, if you ask me, has created this pretty awful work environment, like imbalance. So like it's the Libra generation, I think, that started to introduce more healthier balance. We are such workaholics. We bury ourselves. It's like a way of escaping. We just like get into a, the more we work, the less we can worry about the meaninglessness of life and what's the point of it all, kind of existential, crisis, existential questions, right? And it's the crisis that then gets us into mode of like searching for meaning that's beyond logical, practical, evidential, and all that. The trouble is that the crisis often brings Pluto in Virgo on its knees, and it's then that we reach out to God or whatever our choice is of that spiritual help. But then as soon as the crisis is over, we forget, and so we don't really make big enough progress. So that the idea is to practice that spirituality more regularly, more frequently. And if you're Pluto in Virgos who are already doing this, I would love to know how much Pisces you have in your chart, or 12th house, or where Neptune is, because I imagine that is your saving grace. And for us who don't have that, my life story is just, it's such a dry land where I live in terms of spirituality, and I really have no water except on Neptune in Scorpio. And yet that in itself is my work. And the final piece I want to say, which is really kind of for me the biggest piece that I have been, when I discovered this, it was like, wow, explains so much. And it kind of tags along onto this crisis of meaning, or follows nicely, because, and with everything I said actually, whenever I mention that it's hard for us to change, is because Pluto in Virgo is the archetype of the crisis of the will, a crisis of will. And it's because Pluto is the will and Virgo is crisis. So we have, now there is a real sense in me that I just can't get that will to last. Like I can have a will for a day and I start, the change happens, but it's like I very quickly just fall and I don't have the will to carry me through. And so like I say, it could be just my own personal constellations there that are extra, like making this really, really heavy duty example. But I would love to hear your thoughts on that and your experience rather, of, do you feel like your will is weak? Right? Your will is weak. Or it's too childlike. It's not refined enough. So it actually creates more havoc and sabotages you more and subverts you more than actually brings you the goods that you ultimately you were using the will for. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. That's the thing, right? Is it a problem? Like all of these things can be worked with in ways that will not move us away, or it will not be working against. So if I have a weak will, so I'm gonna like find ways to have a strong will. No, I think when I say this doesn't have to be a problem, I'm saying that a weak will, like Pluto in Virgo is can be worked with, right? So what do we do with the weak will? So we catalog it, we record it, we chronicle it, we observe it, and we make something with it. If nothing else, just like what it means to have a weak will. I mean, I would read that book. So there's you creating something and feeling like you have fulfilled a purpose within your predicament. That's at least how I look at. That's how I look at my life, and every time I go down that road in that way. So I approach my problem by flashing it out, making it bringing it to life, and maybe repurposing it without losing its poison, without losing its poison, because I don't want to dilute it. I don't want to. I want to experience it in its fullness, but I don't want to be dragged down by it. So I when I approach it like that, so I'm going to work with you just as you are, in all your toxicity, in all your poison, but let me do something with you in that form. And then that becomes a medicine. So the poison becomes a medicine. So all of this that I spoke about here can be worked with and made something with it that then is actually feels like you have just drunk a nectar or soul-soothing syrup, or any other kind of form of medicine that actually makes you heal inside and makes you feel healthier, right? Another word, another Virgo word. And that's it on this subject. I would love to hear, from like key points. I mean, I could probably have another hour of this, but I would love to hear your thoughts, please, on everything I shared, like, and everything you don't resonate that I haven't talked about. I would love to hear your experience of Pluto in Virgo, or Pluto in sixth, or Virgo qualities. As I said at the beginning of the video, who this would be particularly resonant with.